Welcome back to another edition of What You Need to Know. Mike Richardson here along with Donovan McElligatt, Mashpee Shellfish Warden, and today we're going to get into some of the things that Donovan does for our environment, public health and safety, how to protect aquatic resources, and shellfish propagation, which sure sounds like a lot of work. And it must take a lot of information to disseminate, so let's get right into it. So welcome, Donovan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let's start with you telling Mashpee residents who you are, where you came from, what your background and experience is, and what brought you to our little town of Mashpee.
Okay. So both sides of my family are from the Cape. My parents actually met in marching band at DY and have been together ever since. But I grew up in a military family, so I bounced around kind of all over the place, but the Cape was always home. Grandparents are here, lots of aunts and uncles and stuff. So after I finished college, I had been commercial fishing in Alaska and out of Rhode Island and stuff to work. And after I finished college, I was kind of looking to settle down in more of a specific area, and I ended up here at the Cape because I'd been coming here since I was a kid. And on the Cape, I kind of found aquaculture, oyster farming, whatever you'd like to call it, as a nice in-between commercial fishing and being able to sleep in your own bed every night and stuff. So for a number of years, I did aquaculture across the Cape, ran the farms for the Aquacultural Research Corporation in Dennis, which has farms in Wellfleet, Barnstable, Chatham, Harwich, stuff like that. And then after that, I found the town of Mashpee job, and it seemed like the perfect mix of being able to work with my head and being able to work with my hands, and do some good for the Cape Cod community in the area that I'm living. So ended up here in Mashpee, and it's been a great transition. It's been it's definitely a lot of work, but it's rewarding work. So I'm very happy to be here.
Well, it sounds like you've been around the water and you've been
Yes.
around shellfish, so it seems to be a good match. It seems as though, as a resident of Mashpee, surrounded by water, it seems as though your job might be kind of a nice job, riding around in a boat in the fresh air and the sunshine, and just sort of enjoying yourself. But I can't imagine that's what it's all about. So could you kind of let the folks know, and many probably do, but I'm sure there's some bits and pieces that they don't know. What's it like? What's the life of a shellfish warden in Mashpee? Wrestling shellfish isn't what you do, I'm sure. But.
No,
Okay.
no, not quite. And you're not wrong with the nice weather and riding around the boats and everything. But what you got to take into account is that it's a year-round job. So just for every day that the weather is nice, there's 10 days in the middle of winter when I'm out there in the Mashpee River or something like that, when there's ice on the water, that I'm doing the same job. And essentially the job kind of breaks down into three main components. One is kind of the administrative side. So I sit on a couple of boards and committees with the town, and it's my job to be the voice of shellfish for both sustainability in the fishery and also for the recreational fishermen and for the commercial fishermen that make their livelihood off of it. And so there's being the voice in the town government structure. That's part of the job and the administrative stuff. And then there's the other big one is the propagation. So the town has put a good amount of money and time and resources into growing a lot of shellfish, and a good benchmark is to compare it to what other towns on the Cape grow, because pretty much every town for the most part has a propagation program, and Mashpee grows a significantly larger amount than other towns do, and that's part of the town using shellfish as a component to help clean up the waterways. But that's a big effort in itself. It's It's maintaining all the land-based infrastructure we have for the growing of the seed, the babies that we get in the spring, and making sure those are properly taken care of, and managing the staff that helps take care of them. And that's just the land-based side. And then there's the water-based side, where the things move from our land-based infrastructure out into the grow-out, which will be in the Wacoit side, the Pompanesett side, the Mashpee River, Little River, Great River, basically anywhere around town, trying to grow something there. So that in and of itself is the big chunk of what I do is making sure that stuff is grown properly and trying to improve the fishery as much as I can. And then the last third part is I kind of see it as a combined public education and enforcement side. So there is some enforcement that happens, but along with that is educating the public, because really I'm not here to write a bunch of tickets or try and bust people or anything like that. The enforcement is more used as a tool to make sure that the fisheries around town stay sustainable, stay healthy, and that there are no public health risks involved. But a lot of times that end goal can be achieved just as much by informing the public as taking enforcement action. So it's definitely a very varied job, but it is a nice mix of working with your head in your hands and always having something to do, that's for sure.
Okay. On the enforcement side, it's more of a public health issue in terms of making sure that things are done appropriately, in terms of how they do certain things, or
yes,
the health hazard to bad?
So I'd say the crux of why there is enforcement around shellfish is due to the public health. So don't get me wrong, shellfish are safe to eat if done well, if harvested from a right, proper, open area. The state works very hard to, as does the town of Mashpee, to do constant water quality monitoring and opening certain areas that are maybe only open for some parts of the year. Some parts are open year-round, and some are never open at all, and that's just due to the natural bacteria or certain types of algae that grow in the water that may not make something safe for human consumption, especially in the summer when there's warmer temperatures and stuff like that. The enforcement really boils down to public safety and also being able to keep the fishery sustainable.
Okay. You mentioned numbers in terms of what we do to try to grow. Can you give me some idea of the numbers? I mean, I'm sure that people would be surprised at the size.
Yeah. So last year was the most ambitious year in terms of the number of seed that we took on from the hatchery, and it was right at the upper edge of what we could handle with the current infrastructure that we have. And that was about 10 or 11 million quahogs and 2.5 million oysters, just at the seed point. But in terms of numbers, it's one thing that happens with aquaculture is that everything's on a rotation. These are pretty slow-growing species. So you bring something in, but that seed that you get that year will not be viable for harvest, to be at the legal size for harvest for 2 to 3 years down the road. Okay. So even though you bring that in, you're still sitting on a couple million from the year before, and the rotation kind of builds and stuff. So sometimes it's easier to talk about the goals of what you want to have. So for instance, the recreational oyster fishery that we have down at the Mashpee Neck Landing is very popular. The goal is to get over 500,000 oysters harvested out of the Mashpee Neck Landing recreational oyster fishery per year, and we're pretty close to hitting that target number. So now we're looking at expanding and doing about 2 million oysters over on the Wacoit side and starting another recreational oyster fishery there. So the numbers kind of vary year by year in terms of what we have in the water as opposed to what we bring on, but it's well up in the millions.
So, I mean, that's good for recreational
Right.
people to understand how to harvest.
Right.
Which, so that takes me to the next thing. Maybe that could be some brief explanation. Getting a license and the use of the license, maybe perhaps the time of year or when you can do it, and perhaps a quick description of making sure you don't take the wrong thing out of the water.
Yeah. So the licenses are good for 1 year. They are available to Town of Mashpee residents at a discounted rate, Town of Mashpee senior residents at a discounted rate, or...
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Believe it or not, that's about half the permits we sell, actually, are senior permits. And people use them and they enjoy them. They are available to out-of-town residents too, at a little bit higher cost, but they are all issued through the town clerk's office. So for people that are interested in getting a shellfish license, there's a form you can find online under the town clerk's part of the town website.
Okay.
And just you bring that form, a copy of your driver's license, and a check for whatever the amount is, depending on what category of a license you're getting. And now that town hall is open again, as of yesterday, you can bring that to the town clerk and she can issue it there on the spot, or you can still choose to do it through mail or through the drop box at the front of town hall. But it's a pretty simple process. Normally the turnaround time is a day or two if you do it by mail, and so in person it's even quicker.
So how do people know, is there a description with the license as to the size of the oyster or the quahog that you're allowed to remove, or?
Yes, so we do have the Town of Mashpee Shellfish regulations, which are town bylaws that spell out the amount that you're allowed to harvest of each species and the size requirements. And when you obtain a shellfish license, you're given the information of where those regulations are. And also, part of the regulation states that if you are actively shellfishing, you have to keep a shellfishing gauge on you, which allows you to make sure that you're targeting, whether it's quahogs or oysters or whatever, you're targeting stuff of the appropriate size, and you're not taking anything too small out of the water, because we want the small stuff to stay there to hopefully reproduce.
To grow, right?
And also to grow, yes.
Is there a limit to the amount that you can take out any one time, or?
Yes, so for a family permit, it would be 1 peck per day, but the recreational shell fishery is open 7 days a week, which is a pretty rare thing for towns to have on the Cape. Normally the days that you're allowed to shellfish are limited, but Mashpee is, I believe, the only town, to my knowledge, that has shellfishing open 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Wow. So
you're definitely getting your money's worth
for
the permit, yeah.
One of the areas that's been very frequently discussed is the issue of water quality.
Yes.
And obviously Mashpee has stepped forward progressively, although it's been a while to get to that point, in phase 1 of the wastewater treatment.
Right.
And over the years, there's been discussion about shellfish being I won't use the word panacea, but shellfish being one way to help improve the water quality on Cape Cod and other areas. So perhaps a little bit of information from you as to how that's working. Are we seeing the benefit? My guess is that the improvement is the needed improvement is far greater than what shellfish can accomplish on its own, or we wouldn't be going through a wastewater plan. But perhaps I'll stop talking and let you fill in the blanks.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. One of the things that I think it's important to note is that in that wastewater plan that was put up, it was done in phases, but at the end of each phase there was a reevaluation period. And the plan called for shellfish to hit targeted amounts in the water to hit targeted amounts of nitrogen removed. And it was always set up as a combined effort. It was, shellfish did have an effect, very positively, but as you kind of stated or alluded to, it just wasn't enough. And so it's still part of the plan, but it's just after that first phase, the reevaluation came that it was definitely having a positive impact, but it wasn't meeting the exact benchmarks that it needed to meet. Therefore, with the reevaluation, the sewering option came up. But shellfish are still a part of the mitigation plan going forward, and making it a tandem effort to help clean up the water.
Okay, so obviously the more shellfish that you can grow,
Right.
The more likely you'll have an increased impact on the water quality in conjunction with the other efforts.
Yes. This was a very ambitious plan that was laid out. Nothing really on the Cape had ever been attempted like that. And so with anything like that, you're going to run into the unexpected. And so there were things, because you're dealing with Mother Nature, there were things that looked really, really good and promising on paper that didn't necessarily play out as well. Some areas that were a perfect target for shellfish turned out to not necessarily have the right kind of bottom that's needed to grow healthy shellfish, or perhaps the salinity I can think of in some areas was just a little bit too low to efficiently grow shellfish in the area. So, we've learned a lot through this shellfish program, and we've learned what we do well and what doesn't necessarily work. And so, in conjunction with the sewer, we're really targeting our efforts to areas where we know they can have the maximum impact, and just doing our best with where we know that it's gonna work.
Okay. I mean, what better solution can you find than to be able to harvest something quite inexpensively,
Right.
On a regular basis,
Right.
and enjoy the fruit of that labor,
Right.
if you like shellfish, and at the same time improve your water. That's
Yeah,
a pretty good
it's
deal.
it's a sustainable
Yeah.
food source. Yeah.
So we're coming into the season,
Yes.
perhaps where you're going to be
We are
busier.
in
I'm
the
not so
season.
sure- in the
Yeah, we
season
are in
now.
the season.
So, and living in Mashpee, surrounded by water, and I know a lot of people probably looking forward to it. So, have you got a message for those out there that you want to leave that tells them, how they should act, what they should do, be safe, understand what's going on, don't litter? I mean, how would you like to leave it with, to make your job, you're going to be busy regardless.
Yeah.
To help you.
I'd say one thing, ask questions. You can find my phone number on the website. I try and get back to voicemails or emails. I have the contact email on the town website as well. I try and get back to them within 1 to 2 business days. That's a part of my job, is to ask questions, and I'm more than happy to do that. But, just be safe, have fun, be respectful to the environment that you're in, realize that you share it with other people, whether it be a fellow taxpayer from the town of Mashpee or someone from out of state. It's a public resource that is there for everyone to enjoy, and it's up to us to take care of it, to make sure that we can continue to keep enjoying it. So.
Okay. So, well, there you have it. Now you know what a shellfish warden does for a living on Cape Cod. Very interesting. It's very challenging, I'm sure, and much appreciated. you don't just protect our waters and other resources, but our people as well. So much thanks.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And so Mashpee residents, and we hope that you're watching, but you know a bit more about probably the most serious issue in front of us, which is our water quality.
Yes.
Almost everything that deals with Mashpee is impacted by our waters, and for years our growth and expansion has kind of challenged that. So it's folks like Donovan that work daily to improve the very thing that we seem for years to take for granted. And until next time, Mike Richardson for What You Need to Know, and Donovan McElligatt, over and out.